Good evening, Chesterfield County. Thank you for joining us for the sixth in a 9-part series of community town halls discussing our return to learning plans for Chesterfield County Public Schools. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules tonight to join us. Tonight's meeting is a joint meeting of the Midlothian and Matoaca districts, and we have with us tonight the school board representatives from both of those districts. From the Matoaca district, Mr. Ryan Harder, and from the Midlothian district, Mrs. Catherine Haynes. We'll get through tonight and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that we have out there. When we sent out notification to parents back on Monday, we encouraged parents and families and staff to submit questions. So far, we've gotten close to 1,000 written questions. And if you've been tracking us on any of the social media platforms that we're carrying this on, there are usually 300, 400, 500, up to 1,200 comments on the first night of the first meeting. It's been a very engaging process for the community and for staff. And so we're thankful that you all took time to join us out here tonight. In addition to Mr. Harder and Ms. Haynes, we have with us a collection of educational experts who will be helping to answer questions tonight. We're joined tonight by Dr. Merv Doherty, our superintendent, Dr. Thomas Taylor, our deputy superintendent, Mr. Josh Davis, who is our chief operations officer, Dr. Sharon Pope, who is our chief academic officer, and Dr. Lisa High, who is our chief of schools. They'll be joining us later on tonight as we get into the question and answer part. Just a brief rundown on the agenda so you know what to expect tonight. You'll hear at the beginning, at the outset, from Catherine Haynes, our Midlothian District School Board member. She'll share some welcoming remarks and some opening thoughts about where we are in this process. She'll then turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Doherty, who will walk through the slide presentation. It is slightly modified from what the school board received last Tuesday. There is an additional option that's been modified based on community and staff feedback. So we'll go over that. We'll look at how we got to where we are, and then we'll talk about next steps moving forward as well. We'll give our two school members a little bit of time to reflect on what they've heard, and then we will open it up to questions. The question and answer piece has usually been a little bit more than an hour, and then we'll wrap up here tonight at 8:30. For those of you who can't stay the entire time, this video will be posted in its entirety on chesterfieldschools.com. The first 5 town halls that we have done already are already loaded up there. If you don't care to go over to the website, they're also on our YouTube channel and on Facebook when they were shown. So we appreciate you joining us tonight. And with that, we'll turn it over to Ms. Haynes to get started.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. Good evening to everybody who's watching. I want to thank you for joining us on rather short notice for this very important conversation. I bring warm regards from Ryan Harder, the Matoaca representative on the school board, and myself, Catherine Haynes, the Midlothian representative. And I welcome you to the the sixth, right? I'm losing track of virtual town hall meetings, 3 that Mr. Harder and I will do together. And the purpose of these conversations is to gather constituent feedback regarding the return to learning options so that we can adopt a plan that is best for all of our students and families and teachers and staff. And we are really in listening mode right now. I see sometimes on Facebook that the school board prefers option 2 or option 3, and that's actually not true. None of us have made a decision right now. We are really just in listening mode. So while none of us could have predicted the impact of the pandemic this spring, Ryan and I are very proud of our county's commitment to ensuring that the learning continued. Going forward in the fall, we are confident that our outstanding team of educators, administrators, and central office staff will continue that excellence as they plan an engaging learning environment for all of our students, regardless of what that might look like. We will also be using our growth mindset and learning from the bumps of the spring. I'm going to be honest, this is not an easy decision to make, and I struggle with it on a daily basis. Hearing from our community helps guide us through the tough decisions. It makes it easier when we hear your feedback. No matter what learning looks like in the fall, be assured that we are committed to our students, families, and employees. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Doherty.
Mrs. Haynes, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. And I will try to get to this presentation quickly. I apologize, little technology issue here. Here we go. So thanks for joining us tonight, and we want to share with you the information that of options and opportunities where we are as of today, July 1st, with the guidelines that we are directed under and following. So this is our opportunity to share with you our opportunities to have education for all of our students and new learning for all of our students for the 2021 school year. We already had Ms. Haynes give us a welcome, and thank you, Ms. Haynes, and the opportunity that we have to give you an overview and acknowledgement, also understanding the presentation of options that we are considering, as well as looking at uncertain future issues that we are predicting, as well as the unknown. And then after we finish the presentation, we are looking forward to answering your questions and listen to your concerns. So we in Chesterfield believe that face-to-face instruction is the best for all students under normal circumstances. And we would love to have every child back in the building starting in September. We want our students to return to school as quick as possible. We want to do this with safety and health for all students and staff as the number one priority. And we realize that there are families who want to return to school now, and that others prefer that they would rather wait until there's a vaccine and this pandemic is over. And it's clear that not everyone will be happy with it pending the decisions that we are going to make, but we will do so with priorities that we are going to be sharing. The school board will have the expectation of voting on this decision for the start of the school year on a special meeting called for July 20th. Everything we are about to discuss is as good as today's date. Obviously, things are going to change quickly as we just moved into phase 3 today. There's talk about a phase 4 and a beyond phase, and we will do one thing, and we promise to do this, is communicate what we know to you as soon as possible. So we rely on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the governor's office, information from the Virginia Department of Health, from the Virginia Department of Education, and the Chesterfield County's risk management team who works with the Chesterfield County Health Department. We also review executive orders. We are looking at social distancing guidelines and other health and operational recommendations. And we continue to wait for new guidelines as you know, they sometimes change weekly and even daily. We want to make sure that we hear from everyone possible, from our students and staff members to families and community members and businesses, as well as doing surveys and looking at future surveys, talking about attendance and transportation issues. Our variables, that we know that individual families have a choice. They have a choice to come to school face-to-face or have a virtual learning opportunity. And that is for our options 1 through 5. We look at access and of technology and internet for all of our students. And we say all of our students have the technology and internet that they need to do the work required and be a successful student. We have operational flexibility. We have to look at how many students can we put on a bus? How many students can we put into a classroom? And those numbers and calculations continue to change. The executive orders of face coverings when in the building and even now in public. And the opportunity we look at, how do we look at scheduling for grouping of students and looking at our student schedules for their classes for a successful 2021 school year. We, under the Virginia Department of Education guidelines, we are asked to share our health plans and reopening plans with the department. However, the sole authority for our final decision will be based from the school board's vote. And we know that under the guidance from the state that we should continue to hear and listen to the accounts from the local health agencies, from our community concerns, and our constraints of our facilities as due to the guidelines. We did speak with risk management who gives us guidance on the safety and health. They did look at the 50% capacity, thought it was reasonable. We know that in the middle of this month, the 15th or 16th of July, the Department of Labor is to provide workforce guidelines for all businesses and schools. We know that all staff members must certify that they are well to come to work. And we also have guidelines that if we do have something occur in a school, that how do we notify and clean and get the facility ready to reopen. We know that right now, as of July 1st, that a mask must be worn by every student who has a seat on the bus. But we do know that if there are two family members on the bus, they can sit together. So we know that the options that we reviewed with the board last week included us coming back to school all at once, but we are going to err on the side of caution, knowing that health and safety is important for 63,000 students and 8,000 employees. We will continue to follow the guidelines from the state, but also from the CDC, from the Virginia Department of Health and Risk Management, as well as other indicators that we receive from county information. So our options have priorities: safety for our students and employees, the student social emotional well-being, serving our most vulnerable students, making sure they have equitable access of resources, making sure we have flexibility and that we have communication with everyone, understanding that recovery of lost learning is important, but also pushing forward with new learning during the school year, and providing professional learning opportunities for all staff members to prepare for this upcoming school year. With our most vulnerable students, the following groups of students will report every day face-to-face school is in session. All levels of 1, 2, 3, and 4 of English language learners, and all level 2 adapted curriculum students with disabilities. So here are our options. Option 1, which we all would want to happen tomorrow: 100% of our students reporting to school, with the options of our parents having to return to school or to go with a virtual learning opportunity. And with the option for the parents of either coming to school or leaving your child at home, are available in options 1 through 5. When we look at the option 2, it's 50% of our students coming to school each day. As you see, this will be an odd, even opportunity where one day you're in school, the next day you're doing your work that was assigned by the teacher. You would come back the next day, and it would just continue to be a rotation of every day. Half of our students would be in the building receiving instruction. With all of our options, attendance, grading, testing will be mandatory and taken every day, and we will continue to move forward to making sure that learning and new learning occurs every day your child comes into the building. Option 3 is 50%, but a different of our students. However, you can see that they would come on Tuesday or Thursday or Monday, Tuesday and Thursday or Wednesday and Friday, with Monday being a cleaning day, an assignment day for professional development, and also contacting students for check-in. Option 4 is similar, except you would come to school on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, with Monday similar being a cleaning day, professional development day, and staff contact day. The new option, which we received from the community, was option 4 with a modified, we call it 4B, it's modified, where you come either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. And anytime you see work from home, that is work assigned by the teacher for students to do and have it ready when they come back to school at their next appointed time and window of learning. Here, this will be either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday, with a cleaning day on Wednesday, contact day, and professional development for teachers. Option 5 is 25%. That means a quarter of our students would come each day. With the guidelines continue to change, this is more of an option that is now sort of slowly leaving the site of opportunities here. But it would have a Monday, a cleaning day, and then 4 days of different students coming in the building. Option 6 is virtual learning for all students. We have no idea where we will be next month or even in September, or if something happens during the course of the year in November or December, where all of our students are receiving virtual learning 4 days a week. This is why we are preparing all of our students with Chromebooks and with internet access to be prepared for the worst case scenario of all of our students receiving virtual learning and our schools being closed. So at this point, we know that we are in phase 3 as of today, and we have no idea what future phases will look like. Will they change our capacities? Will they change our regulations? Will they change our guidelines? The most viable options, as you look at option 2, actually instruction every day, but 50% of our students coming, rotating every other day, and a face-to-face opportunity with on their off day, they're doing their assignments, preparing to have them graded the following day. And option 4B is 50% capacity with half of our students coming on Monday and Tuesday, and the other half coming on Thursday and Friday. So, Mr. Bullis, that's the presentation to this point, and we welcome questions from the community time.
Thank you, Dr. Doherty. Ms. Haynes, Mr. Harder, before we get started with questions, any observations on the presentation that you've seen and or comments that you've heard to date?
I'll just jump in. Thank you for the presentation. The comments that I'm getting most frequently right now are asking that we address the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines and that we squash the rumor that we are moving to a 4x4 model and getting rid of the arts.
We'll be taking care of all 3 of those tonight.
Thanks.
Mr. Harder?
Hey, thank you, Tim, and appreciate you guys for putting this together again. A lot of the questions that I'm hearing from constituents revolve actually around elementary aspects to it, especially with kindergarten. So if we can kind of clarify a little bit, and maybe there will be some questions that will come up throughout the presentation, the questions that are being answered. I'm sure that they would like a little bit more clarification on some of those options. I'm excited to hear what Ms. Haynes said about the American Pediatric Association's report and to see how that's really going to drive. Just parents, please stay with us. Things are going to be fluid. They're going to be changing. Trust me, I'm losing sleep too. Every night I'm thinking about the same, so just like everyone else is. And well, what if we do this? Can we do that? We're right there with you. We'll take questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harder. We are going to go ahead and move into the question and answer phase of today's community meeting. As you know, and as we mentioned earlier, we have solicited questions in advance online through a Google form. Have nearly 1,000 of those. We won't get through all of them tonight. As of a little while ago, we already had about 70 or 80 comments on the Facebook feed that had started for about 20 minutes ago, and several comments on our YouTube feed too. So we'll move forward with those. If you missed these questions and you have to jump off or you jumped in late, we'll be putting together a frequently asked question document for our website, which is mychesterfieldschools.com. We'll be posting that after at the beginning of next week, after we finish our town halls tomorrow. Just a little bit of time to offer them. We're not going to be able to answer the 3,000 or 4,000 questions that have already been submitted by a comment or the Google Doc, but we will lump them into themes and into frequency, and we'll with that regard. Tonight, we're going to attempt to get through as many of the questions as we can, have several of pre-submitted questions, and again, the questions on our social media feeds are piling up as well. So let's get started with that. Let me get the energy efficient light goes back on real quick. Sorry for that interruption. Have to be able to see. We're going to tackle the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics question first. On Friday of last week, there was an initial recommendation put out by the American Academy of Pediatrics. They suggested that children return to school sooner rather than later so that we can monitor not only the academic progress of students, but they wanted us to be mindful of the social, emotional, mental health, and general well-being of our students. That information came in obviously after we did the 6 options to the school board. We've now put out feelers to the Virginia Department of Health, our local risk management team, and others to see what that information melds with what we've gotten so far. I would acknowledge that the American Academy of Pediatrics is not a regulatory agency like the Virginia Department of Health and or CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. but guidance is going to be something that we'll be looking at as well. So we'll continue to look at that. We wait for some feedback from the state level on that regard, and update families as soon as we have any information on that. Dr. I'll start with you. Let's look again at the groups that we are relying on information from. And to be fair to our local folks, a lot of folks are saying, why is risk management so involved? But really, we following the guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Virginia Department of Health mainly, and then even the Virginia Department of Education spent a substantial amount of time putting together 136 pages worth of recommendations that they thought divisions should use too. So let's talk a little bit about those individual entities.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bullis, and thank you for the question. Good evening, everybody. We have a number of agencies that we're working with and receiving guidance from. And again, referring back to Dr. Doherty's presentation, any recommendations that come forward to the school board are going to be couched in the context of whatever phase we are projected to be in at the start of the school year. I begin by saying that I would love to tell you that instruction is our number one priority. The reality is that student and staff safety and campus safety are our number one priority, and that instruction is our number two priority. That being said, it is important that we look at everything through that safety lens first, and that we care for our students' needs and our staff needs through that safety lens before we start talking about the optimal academic environment. As Mr. Bullis mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of guidance that has come from our governor's office and through that, the Virginia Department of Education, where they've released their R20 plan, our 2020 plan. This can be easily found on the Virginia Department of Education's website. And this document does provide guidance to school systems, kind of mapping through the different phases in terms of what school systems should be doing and what they should be allowed to do while maintaining healthy guidelines and also following expectations as laid out by the Center for Disease Control. So the Center for Disease Control does have a mandate. And that mandate is to provide guidance to stop the spread of this global pandemic and other infectious diseases. The Virginia Department of Health has the mandate to maintain public health in the Commonwealth. And I will say we're grateful to have the guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics, because they have been a great partner and given us great guidance in the past, but they have a mandate, and their mandate is to look after students. The mandate that the school board has is not to just look after students, but also look after the well-being of our staff as well. So there's lots of variables for us to consider, lots of things to think about, and the guidance that we've received to date takes us up through phase 3. We can anticipate that as the weeks go on, that we should anticipate more guidance, and that may change our recommendations that go before the board. If we have learned anything as parents and as community members and as students and teachers, it's that we need to be flexible and we need to be patient, and we need to be mindful that things have been changing at a very rapid pace. And though we are definitely making plans to make a recommendation to go before this board so that they can put us on a pathway towards opening and what that will look like, we are doing it with the caveat that some information might change, might get updated, and we might have to make a revision.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We have a question coming in from YouTube that I'm going to insert right here, and I'm going to hope that you can answer it, Dr. Taylor. Mike said he's asked it 5 different times and hadn't gotten an answer yet, so we want to make sure that it gets answered. And then if I could ask everybody to mute if you're not speaking at this time as well. So, Dr. Taylor, the question is, and it deals with some regulatory answers, I believe.
Okay.
How come we're talking about opening schools when daycares and camps are, in some forms and fashion, are already open? What's the difference? How come some people can do it now, and why can't we just make schools wide open?
So that's a great question, and Mike, I hope I answer this correctly. The regulatory guidance that we have received is specifically tied to the Virginia Department of Health connection to following CDC guidelines. As a public institution, we are beholden to the guidelines that we have been given. It will ultimately be the school board's decision whether or not the school system will open, and that is certainly an option. It's an option that you've seen presented. But one of the things that would be a concern about is that if we did open, we would be doing so against the guidance and the guidelines that have been offered to us for consideration. We are heavily reliant on the expertise of others, and we are not responsible for what other organizations may or may not be doing, summer camps, et cetera, et cetera. But what we are responsible for are the 63,000 children that walk through our front door and the nearly 10,000 employees that walk through the front door to making sure that they are safe. If you're anything like my family, you're ready for these kids to go back to doing something that's not involved in our house. And so there's a tremendous amount of empathy, and we certainly have all felt that imposition. But we don't want to send our kids back to school to then have to turn around and send them right back home. So we are doing this with a tremendous amount of trepidation, and with an eye towards caution, but also following the expertise of others. I told something funny to the group last night, and it's a good reminder. That's how disappointed my kids were when they found out that I was not a medical doctor, but a doctor of public schools. And the reality is that none of the folks on the call this evening or on Facebook Live or YouTube have a medical degree. We are not medical expertise, but yet we consult with the expert to give us guidance on really what is best and what is safe.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I think it's probably also worth noting that while I could never do the job that they do, a daycare facility might operate with 120 or 140 students, and Burt High School has 1,900, or over at Bailey Bridge, there's 1,500, or over at James River, there's 2,200 students. So there's a numbers difference there in operations as well. Let's get into the cleaning of our buildings, Mr. Davis. There's some interest there in knowing a little bit more about, before we start talking about instruction, Andrea has asked, what's going to be the plan to keep my classroom clean? So can you talk a little bit about what we're going to do from a facilities management standpoint?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bullis. And I'd like to say hello to the entire community. These engagement events, I think, have been very instructive. And keeping our buildings clean is right there in that top priority of safety and health. We can't expect our children and staff to remain safe and healthy if we're not cleaning the buildings. I'm going to talk specifically about the folks that do that full time, but I'm also going to mention that cleaning is kind of turned into at least a side responsibility for everybody. When I leave a conference room now, I'm going to be wiping it down with some towels and disinfectant. And teachers, I'm sure, are going to be spending a bit more time on keeping things tidy in the classroom. Bus drivers, their job responsibility is mainly to safely drive the bus, but they're going to spend a considerable amount of time disinfecting that bus twice a day. But let's get into the school buildings, where every day our building operations supervisor works with their day porters under the supervision of our principals and they're going to remain vigorously cleaning almost all day. That's going to be one of their sole primary responsibilities. And we've identified some cleaning supplies that they're going to use in terms of whether they're doing something with the floors, whether they're doing something with the bathrooms. But we've got some great disinfectants on order. We've got hand sanitizer stations that are coming. That's going to contribute to keeping kids clean and healthy. But those day porters are going to probably be cleaning our restrooms as many as 4 times a day. The high-touch surfaces, door handles, and so forth, where multiple folks are touching something. It's just something they're going to watch all day and be cleaning all day. Ask about the restrooms. That'll include the sinks and the restrooms inside some of our elementary classrooms. So in addition to that staff, we have our custodial contractors who come in every afternoon and evening to clean the building and have it ready to go the next day. So you'll see that some of the options call for a quote unquote cleaning day, such as Wednesday in option B4. But I want everybody to understand that we're going to be cleaning our facilities each and every day, and we're going to be doing it vigorously. The purpose of that Wednesday would be to have more opportunity to do it even more thoroughly without children in the building. So to focus on some problem areas that may have emerged. And so again, going to be a little bit of the job for everybody, but we've got great staff that are prepared and are training this summer to take care of the cleaning of the buildings. I mentioned the bus drivers. I'll cover that too. They're going to have some disinfectant and spray bottles and disinfect those buses at the end of their morning operations and the afternoon operations. There's been some discussion about transitions. Do classrooms at the secondary level need to be disinfected and cleaned between classes? Do buses, should they be cleaned between each and every bus run? And in talking to risk management, they see these transitions as opportunities where we're not necessarily going to disinfect. If there's been a spill or something, obviously that's going to be cleaned up. But it's really not practical to clean every classroom and to keep kids in the hall for 10 or 15 minutes. And just like with the buses are going to have to keep running. And I know I'm going to be chatting about transportation. So we feel a good thorough cleaning of the buses at the end of the morning and the afternoon will be sufficient, just like, and as I've described for our buildings. So be happy to chat some more if there's more questions on cleaning. And I know we're going to talk about buses in a little while too.
Yeah, let's, Mr. Davis, let's go ahead and stay on the cleaning part. Amy points out there's cleaning and disinfecting are two different words. How do we handle a disinfection when there's an actual positive case, if one comes along?
Yeah, we've actually had a few of them already this summer with some of our staff, mainly custodial staff, the folks that are already in our buildings and working. So when we have a positive case, if we isolate, let's say if it's been in an individual classroom, a student or a teacher, then that area of the building would in fact be isolated for significant cleaning with fogging type apparatus that would truly lay a disinfectant film, you might say, over everything that's in that building, in that area, and that then it would then be allowed to cure. And we would not bring folks back into such an area for at least 24, maybe 48 hours. So those types of disinfectants, when we know we've had a positive COVID exposure, are going to be important. And again, like I said, we've done it at a few schools already this summer. And, we're going to be at our toes and ready to do it in classrooms and buses if we have those inevitable positive cases this fall.
Thank you, Josh. One more coming your way. I want to nip this one in the bud real quick. Lisa is concerned about the number of buildings that are idle right now and testing for Legionella. Let's share with the community everything that we're doing to make sure that we don't go through that again.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad the question came up. And, Chesterfield has had some difficulties, let's be candid, in regards to areas such as our cooling towers, our HVAC systems. And so I'm glad that we've invested more time and energy. Just want to share with the community that we have cleaned those cooling towers multiple times. And now we are using a dual biocide. Biocide is an agent that kills those bacteria if in fact they're present. So we're constantly applying those dual biocides, and we've moved into testing this summer. And as we get the results of the test, even if we find a microscopic amount of Legionella or another bacteria that's still way below the standards of danger, and again, more thorough cleaning will take place. So we think we've got that well in hand. We're going to be on our toes, and we're going to share with the community in case we ever have another health hazard. But we don't believe that's going to take place due to the fine work that's taken place in the last 12 months.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We're going to give you a chance to catch your breath, and we'll move along to some other questions, but we'll come back to transportation shortly. Our business is keeping children safe. That is our primary goal. The goal that the business that we're mainly known for out in the community, though, is educating students. Dr. Pope, there's been some wondering about what virtual learning actually means. So can you define what we talk about when we talk about virtual learning and the options that we've presented?
Absolutely, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for that question about terminology. There are a lot of terms, as we all know, floating around right now related to the various learning models. And I've taken the time in some of the other town meetings to list a lot of those terms. But if you hear any of them and you Google any term that implies a learning model different than what all used to, you get a variety of definitions. So where I've been defaulting and trying to answer this question for our community is to really consider how we use language within Chesterfield County Public Schools. So, Mr. Bullish, you asked specifically about the word virtual. And with virtual learning, with the questions we're receiving from our parents, we are clearly hearing how that term is being used. And most often the questions come in the form of, can I, as a parent, elect to keep my child in virtual learning 100% of the time? So we're embracing that definition and how our community interprets that word. We're not in disagreement with that interpretation at all. And for us, when we talk about virtual, and when Dr. Daugherty referenced the word virtual on some of the slides that he previously looked at, we are going to, in Chesterfield County, consider that the option that all parents will be extended, where a parent who's not yet comfortable with a student returning to our classroom setting will have the choice to keep the child out of school, but fully engage in a learning experience this coming fall through CCPS Online, where we have Chesterfield County teachers. We're going to expand that very successful secondary model to include opportunity for our youngest students, our elementary school students. And we're going to provide courseware and learning applications, but most importantly, and I think what parents want to hear, that even if that decision is made to remain 100% virtual, they will have teacher support. They will have opportunities to connect with their teacher through the learning devices that we're now preparing to provide to all of our students, as well as helping with that connectivity issue. They will have teachers who are setting goals, progress monitoring, helping instruct through the device for students who are having struggle points with different concepts. So for us, when we talk about virtual learning, we're going to compartmentalize that to that 100% opportunity for students to continue learning, but not yet return to our school building.
Thank you, Dr. Pope. Dr. High, I'm going to come to you next with two questions associated with virtual learning. One is an exciting point for us. That is that while we ended last year with all students in grades 5 through 12 with learning devices, Chromebooks, we've extended that well beyond that. And as we start in the fall, all of our students will have a device, and we are offering access to connectivity as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So yes, we are really excited about being able to offer devices pre-K-12 and through access through, we're using Comcast Essentials, where we're able to get it at a cheaper cost, and it will be paid for families who qualify for that, as well as we're using hotspots that we will give to families. Dr. Daugherty has gone out and worked very closely with community and our Education Foundation to secure funding to offset the cost for the Comcast Essentials and the hotspots. We do realize that there are some families who will not be able to access the Comcast, so in that case we would look to offer hotspots, which is a cellular service opportunity for families. We believe that the devices are just that. They are a tool, but they are a tool that we can use to enhance our instruction with students, which is ultimately what we do every day, is to educate our students.
Thank you, Dr. High. I think it's an exciting time, although a difficult time. We are now one of the largest, if not the largest, school division with a one-to-one implementation for every student has a device. If you could, stay with me. The question has come up, how are they supposed to do virtual learning if parents are working? So specifically for daycares, can you talk about some of the outreach that we're going to do there?
We know that when we're going into an alternate schedule or school schedule, that there will be challenges for families. When working with daycares, we have worked with some of our team members to identify many of the daycares that our students are attending on a regular basis. And with those daycares, to the extent that possible, we'll partner with them to provide information regarding our programs. instructional information and support their efforts with students who are doing their schoolwork during the day. We'll share any appropriate professional learning opportunities that may assist in them understanding how we use our learning management system, which is Canvas, or if students are working on some work during the day, if there's some support that we can offer through one of our teachers or even one of our specialists at the central office, we'll partner with them as much as we possibly can to support our families.
Thank you, Dr. Haya. And I'm not sure if you or Dr. Pope want to take this next question, but we want to reassure families that, that this is not a student sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours a day. So
no.
It's towards the end of the school year last year. What will that look like?
Well, especially at the elementary level, something that we are really trying during our summer recovery of learning is in the morning, we're planning for a morning meeting, and then there will be a time for students to possibly get on the computer, but it's probably about a 15-20 minute time frame that we're asking them to engage in one of the learning protocols that we have, whether it be Lexia, Mayan, Dreambox. So that's what we're doing with our elementary, but we really want students to be able to have opportunities for doing art activities, things that may be outside of the total instructional and academic realm. We always are looking for opportunities to make sure we build that social emotional opportunities and make sure that they're physically well as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As we head into about halftime, I want to go back and recap a little bit of what we've learned so far. We've gone over the various options that have been presented to the school board, and we started to entertain some questions about how we're going to keep our schools clean, what that process will be, and then what instruction might look like moving forward. Still got a lot to go to include transportation, special education, that type of thing. I say this with a slight grin on my face. There's a gentleman on our YouTube channel, Willie Waffles, who is asking when we're going to start reading some of the questions that are submitted. So I've mentioned his name so he knows that we are paying attention. The next question actually comes from Steve, who asks, who will teach the virtual classes if teachers are teaching in person? Dr. Pope, can you help with that one so we can clear up any misperceptions there?
Absolutely, and it's a great question, and it's one that we had to grapple with quite a bit, actually. We feel it's fair to ask our classroom teachers to teach face-to-face as they're used to doing, as well as manage assigning work for the students who are not in front of them on those opposite days. We don't feel it's fair to ask those teachers to then also manage a third scenario of learner, which is that virtual learner that will not be coming into the classroom. For that reason, we have determined that we will assign teaching staff, and a lot of our teaching staff are very willing and are actually asking the question if this opportunity is available, to teach as part of our CCPS online faculty. So those teachers will be dedicated to students who have chosen and their parents have chosen to remain 100% virtual. So the teachers kind of are split in how we're seeing the teacher who manages the face-to-face and distance learning versus the teacher who will be assigned and probably very excited because, again, we have teachers raising their hands saying, I'd really like to try that, to remain 100% virtual with classes.
Thank you, Dr. Pope. Keep your mic on. I'm going to send the next to your way as well. Amy's asking if we're concerned that grades will drop if we are in a completely virtual environment or if we're in a half virtual environment.
Yeah, so there's so many factors with grades, right? And ultimately, we want grades to reflect student learning and mastery of learning. We know that there are going to be many things different in the fall compared to what we experienced in the spring. And that's because as educators, I would like to think that we're all lifelong learners, and shame on us if we don't get better with round two, if we face that virtual or that distance learning again. And so we've heard our parents and we've experienced for ourselves, and we know that there are things that we must incorporate into this next round to include taking attendance, assigning work and grading that work, providing quality feedback to students on that work, and providing a set schedule and routine that students and parents can count on. I'm not afraid that grades will drop, because I do believe in the power and the professionalism and the quality of teachers in Chesterfield County Public Schools. And I know that they will continue to teach and children will continue to learn, and grades will reflect that learning. I do want to point out one other difference as well, as we talk about our learning tools and how we've really increased our capacity as a school district with purchased courseware for all of our secondary courses, shy of just a few electives. And that's Edgenuity. That's VDOE approved. Those are courses already built that have all of our standards of learning and assessments embedded. That's a baseline for our teachers so that they have that comfort in their planning. And then we have, as Dr. Hyde just mentioned, 3 phenomenal district-wide learning apps. 2 we've already had, MyOn and Dreambox, but the third one is Lexia Core, which really focuses in on literacy and is available to every single student, and not just one component of literacy. MyOn is fabulous because it provides reading material, but we know that our youngest students truly struggled in the spring because in a forced, complete virtual situation, it was very hard for teachers to work on those 5 strands of literacy. And we cannot allow our students to fall behind. Phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, competency, or vocabulary. So by beefing up that toolbox and really training our teachers in that use and training our teachers in better distance learning pedagogy, I think our teachers are going to be stronger than ever. I think our tools are going to be better than ever. And I think our students will have just as much or even better opportunity to truly master material. And we're going to show that in those grades that they take home.
Great. One more question for you, Dr. Pope, and then I'm going to move to Dr. High for the next question. Got an interesting conversation going on social media. We have some parents asking, why do we need planning time? And we have some teachers explaining why we need planning time. So as we go into this potentially hybrid environment where teachers are teaching students who are working from home and working in person, explain the need for that planning time for those teachers.
I think you called on me again for that one. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. So quality instruction, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, requires quality planning time. And while we are giving our teachers those tools, it is their expertise that really determines how best to use the tools and to how best to personalize instruction for individual students and small groups within that classroom. It's magical if you're a student sitting in that room experiencing that learning, but it is not magical behind the curtain, Mr. Bolus. It takes a lot of planning. And when we are talking about virtual delivery, teachers have such capabilities. They can pre-group students. They can dial up particular concepts that they may want 1 or 2 or 3 children to focus in on, while others in the class may be focusing in on other concepts. It will allow that personalization, and we are hopeful that no student will feel held back, that every child will have that sweet spot of challenge that we want for every learner. Just enough challenge to keep me engaged, not too much challenge to overwhelm me. And that takes finesse. It's almost as if our teachers are artisans. Their craft is actually knowing how to deliver that instruction exactly for our students, and they need time. They just need time to do that. And I'll always advocate for teachers and planning.
Thank you, Dr. Pope. Dr. High, Shannon has asked if why don't we just bring in our K through 5 students and spread them out across all 64 schools and leave our secondary students online for learning? Have we looked at that option?
Yes, Shannon, we actually have looked at that option. It was something that we discussed probably in May. And in that discussion, we considered the number of staff members that we have and with our teachers. And one of the challenges that we came across is the number of teachers that we have to spread them out. We may not have enough to go to all 64 buildings. The other area that we need to consider is if you are teaching in elementary school, you have a certification and endorsement in certain grade levels. And so it would be difficult for us to have enough teachers to be endorsed in what the state expects us to follow. So that was a challenge. The second area is putting them in elementary school students and middle or high school because of the constructs of the classroom. They aren't conducive to our youngest students. The classroom isn't set up. The desks and tables and all of those things are not the right size. So those are some of the things, the challenges that we found, as well as transportation may be an issue to get the elementary students to all of those areas.
Great, thank you. Interesting questions. First time we've heard it in the last in the 6 town halls that we've had. A parent wants to know if Maggie Walker and the other governor schools, to include Code RVA, are included in these options, or are they coming up with their own plans?
I can tell you that they are coming up with their own plans. Both of Maggie Walker and Appomattox Regional Governor School, as well as Code RVA, all have regional school boards. We have the good fortune of having one of our school board members sit on each of those individual school boards, and they are one vote and one voice on those boards as well.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Mr. Davis, the folks had asked earlier about transportation, not just about cleaning, but how, given social distancing guidelines, we're expecting to get the tens of thousands of students who ride on our bus each day into school.
Be glad to chat about that, Mr. Bullis. There's no doubt that our transportation capability will be constrained this year due to social distancing. The original guidance from the governor's office suggested maintaining those 6 feet of social distancing on school buses. Didn't take me long to figure out that means a driver and 9 students. We would not be able to really transport very many students under those conditions, and it'd be difficult to support any of the options other than option 6. And so fortunately, our coordination with risk management has yielded the next step, which would allow us to have a student in every seat, plus siblings sitting together. So hopefully we can put 20, 25, 30 students on a bus. Obviously, that's a lot less than the normal loads that we have of 50 to 65 elementary students or 40 to 50 secondary students. But we're keeping in mind that our 50% scenarios would involve bringing half of the children to school every day. So that gives us a fighting chance, one might say. And one of the things that we're going to ask is for parents to let us know if they really need school bus transportation. We want it to provide it to those families that need it the most. And we understand each family has unique circumstances. It might not be their income, but their jobs and other timetables might not allow them to get to school but any other way. So hopefully we'll get that input from our parents through some technology and surveys that are going to be shared with them very soon. So we can start with our usual process is to route everybody on a school bus. And like you said, many, many thousands ride. Of those 63,000 students, 48,000 ride. And we think that hearing from many of our parents that have emailed us have said, I don't normally drive my kids to school, but I will be happy to do so in this circumstance. And we thank those parents. We want to hear from you. We want to know so that we can make appropriate plans. We will assure them that if they elect not to ride the school bus and their circumstances change and they need to have the school bus, yes, we will adjust. We're going to try to put out realistic schedules. I'm not going to try to overpromise and then end up having you waiting on the curb an hour for a school bus. We want to put out realistic schedules that we can meet. Folks have acknowledged in written comments about bus driver shortages. Yes, that has been a factor, not only in Chesterfield, but other major localities throughout not only the state, but the nation. So I'm glad to see our HR department is doing a fabulous job of recruiting some folks. And this is the first time I've done this in one of these forums, but I'm going to advertise. If you're interested in driving a school bus, we're going to train you and put you behind the wheel if you're successful. So interested in that, go look at our website. We'd love to recruit you, put you out there. We take full-time drivers. We'll take substitute drivers. We'd love to bring you onto the team. It's a great profession. But we're going to also, when it comes to parent drop-off, one of the questions that usually has come up is, how are we going to manage all that extra traffic? And that's a great point. There are some of our schools that are located on busy thoroughfares. Just one quick example, Midlothian Middle School right there on the turnpike. So we're going to be surveying each of our locations to find ways to make the throughput of our parent drop-off more efficient and effective. Perhaps having multiple staff members out to greet cars and have more than one or two of them unloading at the same time if we've got adequate sidewalk and curb space. You'll find that we will probably find ways of snaking our drop-off lines through the parking lots as opposed to going directly from the highway or the nearest road. So we're gonna do that. We may be even sending out videos to show you that map or diagrams in advance, so you know what to expect. We probably gonna need some help from the police department, and look forward to those opportunities to team with them, whether it's to help provide some traffic control or maybe assist us in training some folks to be crossing guards, where we're hoping more children will walk to school too. So it's going to be a major logistical operation. Our drivers are chomping at the bit to come back. We hope that they will stay healthy. Also acknowledge, when we're trying to recruit more, that we may have some that are going to also have personal circumstances that'll prevent them to drive. So we want to increase our team. We want to plan well. We want to communicate with the community and provide the best transportation system possible under these conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll send you the bill for advertising tomorrow morning. We've got some folks writing in wanting to know how we're going to manage special education and IEPs if we continue to live in a virtual world, or how are we going to provide them services if they're coming some days and not others? Can you address that?
I will address that. Thank you, Mr. Bolus. So we know from our spring experience that we had to look at the accommodations and modifications offered in every single IEP across our division. And we had to ask that question, now that we're virtual, how can we attempt to provide those accommodations and modifications with the restrictions that we've been given? That work and really meeting as an IEP team and looking at those questions and coming up with answers, that was something that we had to do in the spring. And then the summer hit, and we realized that we were going to be virtual this summer, and we realized that we have students who need extended school year services, ESY, and we had to look at their needs and what we could offer. And again, it's always that collective effort of the IEP team, looking at the individual student, that student's needs, and what we're able to do service-wise within the restrictions. And that same question and that same challenge will roll right with us into the fall. So again, that IEP team considering if a child and a parent has elected to come in for 2 days of face-to-face instruction and be distance learning for the other 2 days, what does that look like? Remember in Dr. Daugherty's slide deck, I think it was slide 15, because it is our 6th town hall, and we've seen that slide a few times now. We know that one of the statements that was made there is that our students with disabilities who receive level 2 services. So to help our audience, that would be our students that are in self-contained classrooms, for example. Those classrooms already have smaller numbers. We have other programs such as IDP and ADP, small numbers. Again, students who we know it is in everyone's best interest to have them in our buildings face-to-face receiving instruction as often as possible. And as Dr. Daugherty's slide mentioned, we will be looking at offering families with students receiving level 2 services the option of coming back for 4 days of face-to-face instruction. So again, the IEP would address how often will the student be in the building? How often will the student not be in the building learning? And then what do we need to do for this individual child to meet the needs? There is not a blanket answer to this question other than it takes a lot of hard work. It requires a lot of meeting and communication and partnership work between the IEP team members, which always includes a parent or guardian, and the school personnel. So we're going to keep working, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to ask questions and be creative and continue to do the very best we can with any restrictions we're forced to work under. You're muted.
Yep, I just saw that. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pope. There's been a spate of questions here recently that there really isn't a great answer for, so I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. I'll acknowledge the question, and then I'll ask for a little bit of grace. The questions center around working families and who's going to pay for childcare and how are we going to help children. And I think we all just want the community to know that we are doing the absolute best and will do the absolute best that we can to continue to serve students to the best of our ability. We're going to try and get students in as safely as we can and as often as we can. But we're going to ask for a little grace and patience. This isn't the school division's doing. We're caught in the middle just like you all are. We're going to try and provide the best services at the highest level we can. There's a pandemic to blame here. There's not a parent to blame here. There's not a teacher to blame here. There's not a school division to blame here. We all need to jump in and pull together and pull our students along so that they don't fall behind. And so we're going to ask for grace and patience, and we're going to try and extend that to families as well. So there's not a great answer for that question, and we don't have an answer for that question, to be completely honest. But we're going to do everything that we can to support our students and everything that we can to support our families as well. With that said, next question, start getting into some of the nitty gritty of classrooms and the teaching and learning process. The first two out of the box are, what does career and technical education look like moving forward? And let's knock out that rumor about the 4x4 schedule. What is that all about? And whoever answers that question, maybe Dr. Taylor on the 4x4, if you can explain what the 4x4 method is as well.
Sure, I'll start by explaining what a 4x4 schedule is. It is a block schedule where students would take 4 classes per semester, and they would have those classes every day for a semester. And then at the semester break in January, they would switch over and take another 4 classes, a different set of 4 classes the following semester. What I would say in general, with all things having to do with COVID pandemics and modifications to learning, is that we never want to take an idea off the table. However, it is in our best interest to move forward with a student schedule that will help us pivot back to a regular school day and a regular learning day with the courses that students had requested this previous winter and spring. So what that means is that whatever schedule we end up going with will need to look very similar to what students have experienced in the past. There may be a few extra minutes here and there changed, but we are not interested in changing the structure of the student schedule at this point, because that would not help us pivot between a virtual learning environment and a face-to-face learning environment with as much ease as we know we are going to need. So to that end, we are not, and I want to re-emphasize this for all of our viewers this evening, we are not interested in pursuing a 4x4 schedule at this time for just that reason. I'll follow up with another concern that we'd heard in other town halls about elective classes. What we are trying to do is twofold this fall. Recover learning that may have been lost in the spring semester of the previous school year, and also accelerate learning so that we can increase growth and student achievement in the fall with new course content. We do not want to rob students of the enriching opportunity to take elective courses that they signed up for and that they are looking forward to and that they want to take, whether you be at the elementary, the middle, or the high school level. We pride ourselves on the full and enriching programs that we offer in Chesterfield County Public Schools. They are award-winning and superb because we have the best teachers to deliver those programs. So we know that we want to honor those course requests and provide kids with the schedule that they requested this past year for next year. So with that, I hope that that puts that rumor to bed, actually a couple rumors to bed, and really more than anything else positions us best so that continuity of learning can take place and that the student experience remains as interrupted as it possibly can be going into the fall.
Thank you. Dr. Pope, I'm going to go to you for the CT. Specifically, the question was about the career and technical centers, but I'm going to ask you to answer that. And then Anne Marie and Laura have pointed out that we talked a little bit about special education, general education, but not much about gifted education. Any change to that moving forward?
Absolutely. So I think the question and the spirit of the questions, plural, get to the special programs that we offer. We have dual enrollment, we have career and technical education programs, and we have our gifted center-based programs. And I know I'm not listing all of them, but those are some great examples of unique learning opportunities that have become very popular and successful in Chesterfield County Public Schools. I stressed in a few of the previous town hall meetings, and I think it's important to say it with our listeners this evening as well. Dr. Darty presented options. Those options are general options that we're considering for an entire school system. And our school board, of course, has that difficult task of landing one of those options in July. With any option that is selected and approved, we are already thinking about how can we stretch that option and consider our special programs that exist in our county, because we're fully committed to continuing full force forward with the programs at the highest quality. Specifically to this question, career and technical education, we know that this is a particular program of offerings that require hands-on experiences for our students. It's very difficult to practice culinary skills while virtually watching a video of how to chop an onion, right? You have to kind of get in there and you have to do things with your hands and perfect your craftsmanship in these areas. So we are already considering all the options that are on the table, because we know that our board is considering all the options on the table. And we're thinking about whichever option is landed, how will we be able to offer that full experience for our students? And we've come up with some great ways. So there's no need to go through the details of how it would look under each option at this point. Please have confidence in us that the conversations are happening, the creative thoughts and plans are being put in place, so that July 20th hits, we know our model, and we can move forward offering our center-based gifted programs, our dual enrollment programs, because remember, although the question earlier referenced our Appomattox Governor's School and Maggie Walker and Food RVA, we also work with 3 community colleges, and they also are really grappling with what their models will look like. So we have to make our dual enrollment offerings partner with those community colleges as well. So it's all going to come together. I know we've asked repeatedly for patience, we've asked for grace, we've asked for understanding. And it's difficult because we all want to know the answers right now. But I just have to ask our listeners this evening to have confidence that we are working through those details behind the scenes, so that in July, we will be able to present more details to our families, especially where students are excited and ready to go into those programs this coming year.
Thank you, Dr. Pope. We're approaching about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. We've had some people join us in the last 10 minutes or so. Chris has asked if these are being taped and if they can be found elsewhere, since she joined us a little bit late. They have been taped. They'll be available on mychesterfieldschools.com, our school division's website. They're also going to be available on the YouTube channel and also on our Facebook page. So if you missed some of what we talked about earlier, please feel free to go back and look. If you want to see the other 5 and you have an extra 6, 7, 8 hours tomorrow that you're looking to spend, feel free to watch those too, or join us live for the last 3 tomorrow. And Reese asked when we might have a better idea of when we know what we're looking forward to in September, and the school board is scheduled to vote on July 20th. Again, the caveat there is that we're still in the same place on September 7th and 8th that we are on July 20th. If we need to make some changes, we'll certainly look at those. Megan asked a question about how will we decide, Dr. Pope or Dr. High, whichever one of you would like to take it. Let's go with Dr. High this time. We've bothered Dr. Pope enough this time. How will we decide who goes when in terms of students attending school if we go on a split schedule?
So we've had quite a few discussions around this topic. If students are on a split schedule, and whether it's every other day or it's 2 days in a row and then 2 additional days at the end of the week when another students are going, we'll be looking at it alphabetically, sending students by alphabet. We will also make sure that we send family units of students to school on the same schedule, regardless of whether there's the same last name or not. We're going to make sure that we send students to school in that manner. Was there a second part of the question?
That's it, but I'm gonna come right back to you. Rebecca's asked, when the decision is made on July 20th, let's assume that it's still the same at the beginning of September. Once that decision is made, is it set in stone in terms of students having to follow that path for the rest of the school year? Or is there a possibility that we might change even then? And even more specific, to get even more granular, if a student starts online in virtual learning, at what point can they come back into the classroom or vice versa?
Yeah. So as we witnessed over the last 4 months, things change pretty quickly. And we know that there may be times where parents have selected a learning model and something occurs which makes a need for there to be a change. So our discussion has been that to allow changes to be made to the learning plan by quarter, or for us, it's a 9-week period. And we would, and that's based on the traditional calendar. So if you look at the traditional calendar, a couple of weeks prior to the end of that 9 weeks, families can have conversations around changing from virtual to a hybrid type model, or the other way around.
Thank you, Dr. High. I'm not sure if Dr. Taylor wants to take this next one, or Dr. High or Dr. Pope, but one of our YouTube viewers asked if there is a budget for hiring more staff to handle all of the things that come with this, whether it's additional teachers or additional cafeteria workers, cleaners, cleaning materials. I'll put a plug in now that we're in the bottom 25% in the state in terms of per pupil expenditure. So who's got?
I'm definitely going to let Dr. Taylor take that one.
As I see my colleagues pointing at me, I'll be delighted to answer this. As our constituents and families may remember, back earlier this winter, the school board adopted a historic budget for the school system this past year for fiscal 21, which starts today, as a matter of fact. It increased our staffing significantly. Particularly, it increased 100 special education teachers, 42 ESL teachers, 60 counselors, and a whole host of other positions tied to rapid growth in our school division. There were a whole host of things that didn't even make the budget that were critically important to our school division, but there was a lot that did. In fact, staffing was a huge component tied to that, because we know that we have kind of fallen behind as the years have gone on since the Great Recession, and this was definitely a catch-up opportunity. We had built a tremendous amount of goodwill and consensus with our funding partners in county government, and also capitalized on a historic state budget. However, on March 13th, we closed our doors to the schoolhouse, but continued instruction due to the pandemic. And that did force some revision to our revenue projections, both at the state level and at the local level. That forced revenue projection translated into a $23 million cut that the board then had to reconcile. So the board did a lot of strategic moves in terms of revisiting its base budget, taking out all of its discretionary new spend, and really streamlining to the areas where they were getting the most bang for the buck, the items that were incentivized the most by coupled state dollars. Which brings us to stimulus funding and the Federal CARES Act and the state GEAR funds. We have been the beneficiaries of some federal stimulus. Granted, this is not even in the same ballpark as the ERA funds that we had. Matter of fact, it's about 20% of what we received in ERA funds during the Great Recession. But it is an infusion of cash in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million, which sounds like a lot, but in a nearly $700 million operating budget like Chesterfield County's, it really isn't that much. But let me tell you where we chose to invest those funds and where we are focusing our energies. First and foremost, as we've mentioned before, safety is a primary responsibility of the school system. Instruction is second. So we have invested in personal protective equipment, and we have invested in recovery of learning activities this summer. But more importantly, we have focused our energy on some additional staff. The positions that we had to cut in the general operating budget during the spring in response to COVID revenue projection loss We have then replaced those, and those were in the form of school counselors and ESL teachers. And before anyone gets excited in the comments section, I should tell you that you normally would never want to fund an ongoing expense with one-time money, but we do have reason to believe that state aid will be restored for these positions in the upcoming second year of the biennial budget. And we do have reason to believe that we should be able to support these positions in perpetuity. The best part is we know our kids need this. This is the right way to support our kids with additional counselors and teachers who can welcome our kids with open arms. This is a great way to spend the taxpayer dollars because, as you will hear us say frequently in Chesterfield County, we are focused on Maslow's before Bloom's, meaning we focus on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, taking care of the whole child before we can address Bloom's taxonomy or the educational needs of our kids as they grow as learners. So with that, I'll just close by saying that we have a long way to go. We are still even evaluating our base budget at this point to see where we can make shifts to have other support personnel, such as a full complement of school nurses in every building as quickly as we possibly can. But this is something that you should be proud of your school system. You should be proud of your local government funding partners as they are giving up a portion of their CARES Act funding to help support the local school system. Your state government and federal government are definitely have their eyes targeted on how they can support public education. Of course, we do and could use a lot more, and that would be put to good use. But we are investing those funds wisely into personnel.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I've got about 5 questions left before we turn it back over to the board to close us out. So I'm going to zoom through 2 of them real quick with quick answers. One, there were several folks interested here on about sports and when will practices begin and will there be athletic contests in the fall? The short answer is we're waiting on some information from the Virginia High School League, which governs high school sports throughout the state of Virginia. They have deferred a decision until for a month from now at least, as they wait to get additional data and guidance as well. So we expect that maybe we can start offering some training opportunities in mid-July, but we've got to get those plans approved by the Virginia Department of Health. Meal service was another question. Are we still going to be able to, how are we going to be able to handle children who aren't in school every day yet who need meals? Our food and nutrition services team is currently looking through those options right now. During an earlier town hall, it was stated by our chief financial officer who oversees that department that we will find a way to make sure that a child who needs 5 meals in a week gets 5 lunches in a week. And I would just put a shout out now to our food and nutrition services staff for the heroic job that they've done this summer. They've fed almost 1.5 million kids we served 1.5 million meals since we closed on March 12th. So a Herculean effort from those folks. We're going to close out looking at health again. And I'll take the first one and then I'll ask Dr. High and Dr. Taylor to jump in. Christina's asked, what are we doing to restrict teacher travel? And what types of precautions are we taking to make sure that staff, when they come into the building, are healthy? We did put out guidance in in March, aligned with the county government that if you went overseas, you had to self-quarantine when you came back for 14 days. That is still in place, and we're still looking at additional guidance moving forward as well. Earlier this week, in fact, over the weekend, we sent out a notification to all of our staff, all 8,000 of them, and talked about the procedures that they need to take to do a self-assessment every day that they come to work. There's a series of questions that they have to ask themselves regarding how they feel, have they been exposed to anything, and then each day before they come to work, we ask them to take their temperature. And if the answer is not a good answer for any of those, or if there's a temperature, we've asked them to stay home. In fact, we asked them to sign a document saying that they would follow that assessment. That is now a condition of employment for this school year. So that leads into the 2 final questions. I'll give one to Dr. High and one to Dr. Taylor. Dr. High, yours will be, what do we do with students if they suddenly present ill at school? There are a lot of parents concerned about the sick pay guidelines and some families that don't follow them. And then Dr. Taylor, the last question will be about the notification to families if somebody presents ill at school. So Dr. High, you want to go first?
Yeah, the safety and welfare of our students and our staff are a top priority. If a student exhibits symptoms in school, the student will be removed from the classroom and will go to the clinic. We've had discussions of having really a kind of sick area and then a well area. Sick means a student is presenting some symptoms of being really sick, and then the well area would be where a student may need ice or need a Band-Aid because they've fallen and harmed themselves. If a student is sick, we will contact parents and ask them to come and pick up the student. While we're waiting for the parent to arrive, we will put them in an area that they will not be accessing other students or staff during that time. We'll also make sure that we are, as Mr. Davis said, vigorous cleaning and disinfecting the classroom areas and where the student may or the staff may have been. And then out of an abundance of caution, depending on the situation, we will communicate what the next steps would be. But out of privacy issues with FERPA as well as HIPAA, we will not be able to disclose the names of individuals who may have COVID-19 because we just can't do that because of the safety and regulations.
Thank you, Dr. High. Dr. Taylor, I think she actually got that one for you. So.
Oh, sorry. I should have stopped.
No, that's good. No, you're good. Before we turn it over to Mr. Harder and Ms. Haynes to see if there's any outstanding questions, we asked earlier that for a little grace and patience during this trying time. I think the other thing that we would be remiss in not doing as we close out is give out two very sincere, heartfelt thank yous. The first goes to our teachers and staff. Our teachers specifically, our school board chair noted earlier today, there's not a teacher who signed up to teach children while they're at home. And that means while the teacher's at home or while the student's at home. We all crave that face-to-face instruction. We all crave that interaction. We crave that aha moment when a student finally gets it. And so our teachers have done a heroic effort in turning on a dime, which is hard for a battleship like a 63,000 student school division to do, to make sure that we did everything we could to prepare students for success and still be able to reach out to them. The other thank you that I know the school board joins me in extending is the thank you to parents. You all have a life of your own. You have jobs. None of you signed up to be part-time teachers either. Yet you've handled it with grace and patience, and we thank you for that as well. So as we begin to wrap up, I'll ask Mrs. Haynes or Mr. Harder if there's any questions that you guys have heard that we didn't address that you want us to quickly knock out.
I don't have any questions, but I would like to just extend a thank you to senior staff for putting together these town halls. I'd also like to thank our teachers, our administrators, and all of our support staff, especially food services. As you heard earlier, they delivered 1.5 million meals since March 13th on up to this point, continue to do so through the summer. So that's truly amazing to make sure that our kids are still eating. I'd also like to thank everyone that's been watching and submitting questions. Community feedback's important. It's valuable that everyone has a seat at the table. We want to be as transparent as possible with these decisions. I understand the situation is frustrating. On the school board, we have 15 children in CCPS amongst us on the school board, so we're right there with you. We get the frustration, we get the difficulties, and it is challenging, but we're going to face them together, and we're going to find a way through it. We have to step back as a school board, and we really have to take a look and make sure that our options that we choose to go with are the safest for our students and for our staff. There really isn't a clear and easy answer on this one, to be honest. We all have to take the information and weigh the best option that we have available. We'll have to make adjustments to mitigate gaps, and as we've talked about earlier, even though we do vote and take a decision on the 20th of July, we could end up amending that all the way up until the start of school. As information flows in, things change, we will adapt, and we will make sure that that information gets out to you parents immediately. And once again, thank you to the parents, as Mr. Bullis had related to, for staying with us. We know this is tough. You've been asked to work your job and to help teach your student at home. And that's challenging. It's very challenging. And thank you very much for supporting us as well. I know, like I said, this could be a frustrating time, but we really do appreciate the support. And we are in this together. We will get through it. Just so you know, there are 3 more town halls. Tomorrow there'll be one at 9, 12 o'clock, and 7 o'clock once again. Please, if you have a neighbor or anyone else that you know that would like to listen in to get some of this information, let them know where to find it at CCPS on the website. It's also available on Facebook, and it will be available on YouTube. Once again, like I said, I just wanted to thank everybody for your support, and thank you, staff, for everything you've done up to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. And with that, we're nearing the hour that we designated as the ending point. We want to be respectful of individuals' time this evening. As Mr. Harder noted, the last 3 town halls are tomorrow. I believe the Midlothian Matoaca one is at noon. Am I right on that one? Looking for a thumbs up. Thank you. So if you have friends who live in this district who are interested in hearing more information or have questions that we still have not yet answered, again, we've received thousands of them, so we appreciate your grace and patience on that. We'll be getting the Q&A up out next week. But thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your continued support of Chesterfield County Public Schools, and have a great evening.